Rachel Reeves has a big hole to fill, and she's clearly very upset as no one seems to want to fill her hole. She's gone after non-doms, pensioners and the disabled, but yet none of these people are managing to fill her hole. The solution is not to increase taxes. Rachel needs to trim her expenditure in order to fill her hole. So, no beating about the bush. This is how I would fill Rachel's hole. 6 ways to cut the deficit without increasing taxes are: 1. Cut civil servant pensions. 2. Restructure the NHS. 3. Stop the blatant abuse of government contracts such as on HS2. 4. Grow the economy by boosting exports for the manufacturing sector. 5. Cut benefits. 6. Take a basic economics lesson and work out which taxes you can reduce, which will actually lead to increased tax revenue. The public sector is huge, and there are over 500,000 civil servants working in government departments. Now, some of these civil servants receive for their pensions 28% employer annual pension contributions. That's absolutely absurd. Decent pensions in the private sector range between 3 and 7%. Now, considering these civil servants have been supporting consecutive failing governments that have not given the UK taxpayer value for what they're putting in, I can't see how 28% annual pension contributions can any way be merited at all. Therefore, all civil servants receiving 28% annual pension contributions need to have those absolutely cut down to 6%. These are unfunded, so they're coming out of the current tax take, so it's absolutely, totally and utterly unaffordable to keep paying civil servants working in government departments such high pensions. Restructuring the NHS. My mother worked for the NHS for many years, and she's been saying since the 1970s we need to separate care from emergency care. We also need to have the same amount of staff in hospitals 7 days a week. Without doing this, what happens is someone works Monday to Friday, and if they needed to do an operation on a Friday afternoon but see the patient the next day, they wouldn't do it because they're not in on Saturday. So you have operating theatres being, say, underused on a Friday afternoon or on the last day of someone's 5-day working week. This isn't working. Therefore, the NHS needs to separate elective care from emergency care, have the same number of staff working 7 days a week. The NHS does not need more money. So considering the NHS hasn't had this basic restructuring that people have been saying has been needed for the last 50 years, it's absolutely ludicrous to be throwing more money at the NHS. Shore up government contracts which are being abused, starting with HS2. I know full well that HS2 contractors are switching on their machines, leaving them unmanned during the day to rack up big fuel expenses because they then submit those and make a profit on those. So, threaten to fine them, do whatever you need to do, make them submit telematics reports of their machinery when submitting fuel expenses so they stop abusing their government contracts. I know plenty of people who have seen this horrendous abuse which has cost the taxpayer millions. Grow the economy for small and medium-sized manufacturers by helping them increase their export sales. Small and medium-sized manufacturers in the UK are missing out on a lot of export deals because the government department to help them, UK Export Finance, only backs loans to foreign buyers based on past performance, not future revenue streams. So UK Export Finance needs to come out with a new product where they back buyers and you lend to those buyers who want to buy UK equipment via their foreign government. So if there's any problem in repaying the loan, the foreign government just needs to print more money to pay back their loan to UK Export Finance. Therefore, you're increasing the amount of foreign buyers who then have access to funds to buy goods from UK small and medium-sized manufacturers, because in effect you're taking on higher risk clients who are guaranteed that they're going to pay, because all that they need to do to be able to pay is for their government, who they are working for and doing a project, just needs to print more money. Cut benefits. Leave the disabled and pensioners alone and introduce some policies which will immediately reduce the amount of benefit scroungers and the amount of benefit fraud taking place. Number one, introduce a voucher system so most benefits are paid in the form of vouchers. These vouchers will just cover essentials and not include luxury goods like video games, alcohol, cigarettes. Coming in the form of vouchers, that would reduce the fraud and reduce the amount of benefit scroungers. Secondly, don't pay any benefits to people who've never paid into the system. Force UK-born people who are just relying on benefits their entire adult life to go out litter picking. If they're foreign-born people who have never paid into the system and are claiming benefits, put them immediately on a 30-day tourist visa. If after 30 days they haven't found work, they leave. Take a basic economics lesson and learn that actually with some taxes you can reduce the tax rate and increase the amount of revenue that you get. Prime examples are George Osborne with his reduction in corporation tax. He reduced it by 1% a year and that led to a higher take of corporation tax. Ireland with corporation tax. They lowered theirs substantially and seen an increase in economic activity. You could even just watch the first 20 minutes of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where his economics professor covers the Laffer curve. My personal recommendation would be to cut fuel duty, because then people looking for minimum wage jobs can take up jobs further afield because the cost of work is less, and also it reduces the general cost structure for many businesses. The government needs to reduce the deficit by cutting expenditure and not increasing any more taxes. The British public have had so many tax increases since 2016 and are not seeing any decent benefit in return. So increasing any taxes would be absolutely disgusting. However, I fear Rachel Reeves will not take my advice. I think she will increase fuel duty because she'll see the demand as inelastic because it's an essential. So therefore, she'll be following billionaire John Caldwell's advice in cutting the deficit by increasing a regressive tax.
And I've discussed this with Rachel Reeves. Look, it wouldn't be popular, but none of this needed to happen if we put 10 pence on a litre of petrol. That would raise £20 billion.
A billionaire is always going to want you to increase a regressive tax that falls most heavily on those financially worst off. What do you think? I'm fully in favour of purely cutting wasted expenditure rather than increasing taxes. What do you think? How should the government cut the deficit?